A former Juventus player, a former Manchester City staff member, and now the Leicester City manager. Enzo Maresca has had a great footballing career spanning over 19 years or 394 appearances. As a staff member, he was part of the elite department team at Manchester City before becoming the Parma manager for a season. He returned to Manchester City as an assistant manager for Pep Guardiola after his unsuccessful Parma reign. And in 2023, he tried his hand again as the head coach, this time in the Championship at Leicester City, and this time proved to be the lucky one. It might be the time he spent alongside Pep Guardiola, or his long footballing career, or both, but his tactical approach took the Championship by storm. His 5-5 approach, not aggressive but pragmatic, surprised his opponents. His 4-3-3 formation is setting up the team in a way in which they play with two blocks, but the tactic is anything but defensive. The defensive part comes from the fact that it has an inherent potential for possession-based football if the opposition is not easily breakable. A sweeper keeper on attack duty to participate in the passing game and to sweep up the loose balls. An inverted winger on defend duty, this player is required to step into the midfield when his team is in possession but not venture in the attack. He is meant to become a second defensive or central midfielder, being a shield in front of the defense against counterattacks. Two ball-playing defenders on defend duty as center backs. These players can also be central defenders. An inverted fullback, as he comes inside when his team is in possession and makes up the back three when defending. Of course, the right-sided ball-playing defender is required to stay wider when in possession, to stretch the defensive line and take the right fullback's place. In front of the defense, a defensive midfielder on defend duty. This player is required to participate in the passing game once the ball was recovered, but not to venture too much in the attack. His priority is to recover the ball, pass it on and then hold his position against counterattacks. One box-to-box midfielder and one central midfielder on support duty make up the midfield area. Both are required to get further forward to encourage them to step up when the team is in possession and crowd this space here. Two wingers on attack duty on the wings. Given that none of the wingbacks overlaps, these players must be assigned roles that would stretch the opposition's defense. They are told to cut inside with the ball when possible to compensate for the role's lack of movement. And a complete forward on support duty makes up the formation. This player is required to come deep to get the ball when needed or to be the first passing option when the defensive players need one. In this way, we create the 5-5 setup that Enzo Maresca put in place for Leicester City. His mentality, positive. You can also go with attacking if your team is the best in the league or in the match. In possession, fairly wide and pass into space. Enzo Maresca focuses on possession as the other teams in the championship defend against them, but this doesn't mean that he's not encouraging his players to pass the ball into space if needed. Play out of defense, shorter passing directness and a slightly higher tempo, and low crosses. In transition, counter press, counter, and distribute the ball quickly to the central defenders through short kicks. And out of possession, a high line of engagement, a higher defensive line, trigger press more often and prevent goalkeeper shot distribution. This setup works if you are the best team most of the times. If you are not, then lower the defensive line to a standard one and press less often, maybe even take the prevent goalkeeper shot distribution off. This tactic was a strange one for me. It has an element of the Italian approach, but in the same time it is a Pep Guardiola possession one, while attacking like Jurgen Klopp at times. Indeed, defensively we conceded only 23 goals in the league, and we scored 77, which are good numbers for us. However, at times I felt like we were struggling, especially in European competitions. But we won the league and in a commanding fashion. Studying Enzo Maresca's coaching career, this tactic resembles his path. It took a bit of time for it to get started, but when it did, it felt like it couldn't be stopped. Fabian Hurzeler got Zampaoli promoted last season using this tactic. But who is Fabian Hurzeler? He is a German professional manager, former football player, but not at a high level. I say that he is German, but in the same time he is American and Swiss. He was born in Houston to a Swiss father and a German mother. and his parents were temporarily working in the US, where he spent the first few years of his life before moving back to Europe. Before managing St. Pauli, he was FC Pippin's lead manager in the lower leagues of German football. In 2018, he also took on a job as assistant manager in charge of the Germany U20s and Germany U18s. Emre Can, Fabian Hurzeler's former Bayern Munich second teammate, predicted a great career as a coach for the German-American manager. In 2020, he was appointed the assistant manager of Timo Schulz at the Hamburg-based club FC St. Pauli. The two worked together until December 2022, when Timo Schulz was dismissed and Fabian Hurzeler was appointed interim manager at the club. But this role became permanent 2 weeks later, and since then he managed to shape the St. Pauli team into his image using his own principles. Keeping possession of the ball, harrying the opponents after the possession was lost, and airtight defending. And this style of play worked. FC St. Pauli got promoted to the Bundesliga the season that just ended, finishing first in the league. And on June 15, 2024, Fabian Hurzeler agreed on a contract to become the manager of Brighton and Hove Albion in the Premier League, thus becoming the youngest ever manager in the Premier League. His tactical setup is not a complex one, but the players need to adjust to it as it requires them getting out of their comfort zone and it is very physical demanding. In a way, his tactical setup and philosophy resemble the one of Thiago Motta in the sense that he does not ask his players to stay glued to one position or area on the pitch. If a defender can become a midfielder or a striker or vice versa, Fabian Hurzeler encourages it. This style of play helps maintaining possession and creating goal-scoring opportunities as the players are not restricted by their designated positions. What Fabian Hurzeler requires from his players, though, is to become compact in defense. The tactical formation most often used by St. Pauli was 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1. This formation allows for intricate passes and free-flowing football when in possession. Of course, a sweeper keeper on attack duty in goal, as the goalkeeper is an integral part of the possession game. The back three is made of two wide center-backs on defend and one ball-playing defender on defend duty. I noticed that at times, St. Pauli has defended with two center-backs when in possession, one of them stepping into the midfield area. Two wingbacks on support on the flanks. They are required to provide the width of the tactic and help their teammates up the field in attack. When out of possession, they are expected to be rigid and to try to recover the ball as fast as possible or at least get into the face of their opponents. Stay wider as player instructions for them. One segundo volante and one defensive midfielder on support duty. The segundo volante is required to go further in possession, helping the passing game in the midfield area. The defensive midfielder could also be an anchor or a halfback, but since we are focusing on maintaining the possession of the ball, this role must have ball-playing duties as well. Get further forward for both as player instructions. Two wingers on support and one advanced forward make up the rest of the formation. The wingers are required to provide width to the attack, keeping their fullbacks counterparts occupied, while the striker must move into channels, finding the best areas to attack and score from, close down more often for him, as he must be the first pressing player after the ball was lost in the final third. The rest of the players, besides the striker, ball-playing defender and goalkeeper, are required to mark tighter. As mentioned earlier, Fabian Hurzeler requires his players to harry their opponents and not give them time on the ball. His mentality, positive. Attacking works also if you are the best team in the game. In possession, fairly wide, play out of defense, shorter passing directness and a slightly lower tempo. Mixed crosses and play for set pieces. A possession-based setup. In transition, counter-press, counter and distribute the ball to the defense through short kicks. Out of possession, a mid-block and a lower defensive line are used. St. Pauli defended very well last season, and this was mainly due to the tight and compact structure. The team is required to try to recover the ball as fast as possible, and if not possible, to regroup around the halfway line and start the pressing game from there. If this fails, then the players settle into the defensive positions and crowd the defensive area, giving as little space as possible to the opponents to attack or run into. Trigger press slightly less and trap outside. In my game, trying my hand at an Athletic Bilbao save, we finished third in La Liga using this tactic, which is an indication that this tactic can work at a high level also, against tougher opposition than the real-life St. Pauli had so far. Fabian Hurzeler may be the youngest Premier League manager and may have not had a great playing career, but the glimpses we see now may be the sparks igniting one of the best managerial careers so far. This is one of the best tactics I have ever used in FM. Thank you Legacy of K in Pain for the suggestion. What is it that you look for in a football manager tactic? Is it conceding few goals? Is it dominating your opposition? Is it playing on the counter? Or just having fun? Whatever it is, this man has got you covered. His tactic has been off the charts for me and the opposition we faced couldn't cope with us. But first, a few words about our man. Razvan Lucescu is the son of the great Romanian football manager Michels Lucescu. But during his managerial career, he has also managed the now extinct Romanian club FC Brașov, Rapid Bucharest and Santi among others. And with PAOK, he has even managed to go unbeaten for a season, winning the title out of the great trio's hands. As a player, he did have senior appearances for a few clubs, but nothing to outshine his managerial career. At PAOK recently, he managed to take the opposition by surprise using a simple but very effective tactical setup, the 4-2-3-1 Gegenpress. I'm not joking. Razvan Lucescu has found success using this tactic. Imagine, the system has caused problems even for the mighty Fatih Terim, the current manager of Panathinaikos. As mentioned, this is a simple but effective tactical setup using central midfielders instead of defensive ones. In goal, a sweeper keeper on attack duty. If your keeper is good in possession, the better, as your team will need him to pass around the back and unlock the opposition's pressing game. In front of him, 2 wingbacks on support and 2 ball-playing defenders. I noticed that the wingbacks go up in the attack naturally and participate in the passing game, they don't rush forward. However, we should keep in mind that outliers on the flanks are needed, as PAOK tend to congest the midfield area and release the ball on the flanks to catch their opposition off guard. 1 ball-winning midfielder and 1 central midfielder on support make up the central area. A ball-winning midfielder was preferred as we needed balance in our tactic, and the defensive midfielder cannot be selected here. A box-to-box one goes forward too often and the deep line playmaker is focused on the passing game rather than the defensive one. A central midfielder role was preferred as we need this player to gradually go up in the attacking third, congesting the central area. Thus, get further forward as player instruction is assigned. 1 inside forward on attack duty and 1 inverted winger on support duty are chosen as wingers. The right-sided player makes runs in the box on a regular basis, while the left-sided one chooses the moments when he cuts inside, and when he does it to score. The right-sided winger is told to sit narrower, so he will drag his direct opponent onto him, creating space on the flank. An attacking midfielder on attack duty is chosen then. He must link up play between the midfield, the wingers and the striker, but also take up scoring positions when the opportunity arises. This role is usually assigned to Yannis Constantelias in PAOK's setup. There are instances when he played as a left winger, so the inverted winger role is also chosen to emulate his movement. A very talented player in my opinion. And an advanced forward makes up the formation. As mentality, positive can be used. If you have the chance to use the attacking one and you dominate the game, you run the risk of destroying your opponent. Just ask Athletic Bilbao. In possession, fairly narrow attacking width, passing to space, shorter passing directness and a slightly higher tempo. I noticed that if you pass it shorter and you use this tempo, in the match engine, the opposition gives you quite a few fouls as your players move faster than the defenders. So it would be worth keeping that in mind. In transition, counter press, counter and distribute the ball quickly to the defense and through short kicks. Out of possession, high press, a higher defensive line, trigger press more often and prevent the goalkeeper short distribution. There is a reason I mentioned that this is one of the best tactics I have used so far in FM. In my building a nation save in Romania with FC Voluntari, we broke the domestic competitions. We won the treble, winning the league by 19 points in the regular season and by 16 points in the playoff. We scored 125 goals and conceded 32 in the league. While in the UEFA Champions League, we have qualified as a top 8 team for the first time in this save, winning against teams like Juventus, Sevilla or Atletico Madrid, and drawing against AC Milan, Chelsea and Bayer Leverkusen. However, we were eventually knocked out in the round of 16 by Benfica, but not without going down with the fight. This was a very fun tactic to use, and I followed Razvan Lucescu's career so far since he was managing in Romania, and what he did in Greece with teams which are not top ones at the moment of his appointment is amazing. If I say total and football, what do you think about? In my save, we struggled a bit to make this tactic work, but in the end, we succeeded. We won the domestic treble, the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal and the German Super Cup. But was the playing style total? Total football represents a tactical system in which any outfield player can take over the role of any other player on the pitch. A player who moves out of his position is replaced by another, thus retaining the team's intended organizational structure. In this fluid system, no outfield player is fixed in a predetermined role. The only player who must stay in a specified position is the goalkeeper. Total football also relies on quick pressing after the ball was lost to recover it and start another attack. It's a demanding system, both tactically and physically, but when it's done right, it can be unstoppable. Rinus Michels is generally credited with introducing the system during the 1970s at the Dutch club Ajax and the Netherlands national football team. However, teams such as the Austrian Wunder team of the 1930s or the Golden Team of Hungary of the 1950s were also credited for having played in a similar style to total football. Both sides were influenced by Jimmy Hogan, who was in turn influenced by the combination game. Many teams successfully used this tactical setup, but we are here to discuss about the tactics of only one manager. Rinus Michels played his entire career for Ajax, which he later managed, and played for and later managed the Netherlands national team for 4 spells. He is regarded as one of the greatest managers of all time. He won the European Cup with Ajax and the Spanish League with FC Barcelona, and led the Netherlands football team to reach the final of the 1974 FIFA World Cup and to win the 1988 UEFA European Championship. It should be noted that throughout his career at club and national level, he almost always coached Johan Cruyff, who, of course, is one of the greatest football players of all time and can be an asset to have in your team. Rinus Michels was named Coach of the Century by FIFA in 1999. But what is this total football tactical setup? Before we move further, you need to understand that this playing style may or may not work in Football Manager. Indeed, Sports Interactive introduced the positional play in this year's edition, but this doesn't automatically mean that the players will be able to interpret the tactic. That is why you'll notice certain positions that do not seem interchangeable, but which are made so through other ways in the tactic. The tactical formation is a 4-3-3-1, which is suitable for both regrouping fast in defense and counter-attacking as fast. It is also a formation that caters fast progression of the ball. Of course, around the time Rinus Michels was managing, the sweeper keeper may have been unheard of. But it is used in this tactic as it is another role that can make the player go out of his way to keep the game fluid. The back four is made of a wingback on support, a ball-playing defender on defend, a libero on support, and an inverted fullback. The wingback has no player instructions and is expected to go up the pitch gradually as the possession of the ball is progressed. You could add cross more often and/or from deep if you want to make this role play more actively. The ball-playing defender is largely expected to defend properly, aiding the possession game only when necessary. He's also told to stay wider as his right-sided teammate goes up so the defensive structure could be maintained and his flank to be somewhat covered. The libero is one of the key ingredients of this tactic. Though not uniquely designed for the total football system, it helps a lot if the player used in this role is able to go up the field when needed and essentially become a supporting midfielder. Think about Franz Beckenbauer or John Stones. However, the libero role doesn't properly work in the game without his trusted ally, the inverted fullback, and this is to ensure that enough defenders are kept back for cover. Having said this, the inverted fullback's objective is to tuck inside when his team is in possession, creating a back 2 or sometimes 3 with a defensive midfielder and stop potential opposition counterattacks. To keep a more structured defensive shape, but this largely depends on the team you are managing, the league and the opposition, we have a halfback as the defensive midfielder. You may also use a defensive midfielder on defend or support duty to make this role participate more actively in the possession game, maybe even form the two midfielder setup in possession together with the libero. As said, this depends on your circumstances. one central midfielder and one box-to-box midfielder on support make up the rest of the midfield setup. Initially, I used the roaming playmaker instead of the box-to-box one. If we think about total football, this is better suited. However, this role is strange in this Football Manager's edition, at least my experience using it. While it's supposed to aid the possession game, be a very active role when attacking, he's going AWOL most of the times. To my surprise, the box-to-box midfielder interpreted more the role I intended to use in this system, so I stuck with it instead. However, you can change it as you see fit. While the central midfielder, as it comes without any specific player instructions, is told to get further forward, run from position and mark tighter. And the front three are an inside forward on attack on the right side, a trequartista on the left side and an advanced forward. Here, there are other two changes I have done to adapt to my game circumstances. Initially, I was using an inside forward on the left side as well, to disrupt the opposition by cutting inside from both flanks, while the striker was a false 9. But, for some reason, this setup was ineffective, creating very few dangerous chances. So, I changed to this one. However, the classic total football tactic uses a false 9 and 1 or 2 wingers. The false 9 is important, as this was the role Johan Cruyff played. So, feel free to adapt the tactic according to your own game conditions. The inside forward is told to sit narrower and mark tighter, the trequartista the same, and the advanced forward to run from position, close down more and mark tighter. As mentality, I use the tagging as it fits better with the tactic's purpose. But, if this is too high for your team, positive works as well. In possession, fairly wide attacking width and play out of defense, shorter passing directness and a slightly higher tempo. Higher tempo may also be used. Other options like run a defense and or be more expressive fit the total football idea, but I saw no improvement for my team, due to the players in my squad being quite complete and there is no need to go so in depth with the team instructions. But if you feel like you need to use these options, go ahead. In transition, counter press, counter, and distribute the ball to the defense through short kicks. And out of possession, a high press and a higher defensive line. Trigger press more often and trap outside. Trigger press is only more often and is not maxed out, as the front players are already told to mark tighter and the counter press is ticked on. In this way, we balance out the tactic requirements a bit. We scored 79 goals in the Bundesliga using this tactic, but it has the potential to easily go over 100 goals scored per season. It is a fun tactic to use, especially if the players are the right ones. If you wish to check a different setup for the total football system, the Johan Cruyff one is also covered on my channel. Rinus Michels is credited with using this tactical setup successfully. He may be its creator, he may not be. One thing is certain though, one does not get elected the coach of the century by chance. Thiago Motta wrote a thesis on football and you should care because it influences how his team plays. Also, it influences how your new Football Manager tactic will look like. The ball is important in Thiago Motta's philosophy. Since he received it as a gift from his father, he made it his focal point. For him, the ball became a symbol that needed to be protected by the group, football team. Losing it meant a crime. Thus, when he arrived at FC Barcelona, his ball philosophy widened. The team's approach of not losing the ball and using it as a tool to win matches amplified his conviction. When he arrived in Italy, this philosophy took a different meaning. Both Giampiero Gasperini at Genoa and Jose Mourinho at Inter Milano wanted to protect the ball, to build up vertically, but the methods to achieve this were totally different. At Genoa, Giampiero Gasperini required a more elaborate vertical play. Thiago Motta, from a regista role, could play the ball directly to the striker, Milito in that case. But Giampiero Gasperini explained to him that playing a more elaborate set of passes meant that when the ball arrived to Milito, he wouldn't be the only player with a scoring opportunity. While at Inter Milano, Jose Mourinho required him to send the ball to the striker as fast as possible, thus playing vertically more direct on the counter but skipping the build-up phase and leaving the striker isolated. In France, his tactical approach was given a new dimension, not only by Carlo Ancelotti but by Laurent Blanc as well. The approach of the individual game management to the surface of the team, technically and tactically, added to his protect the ball style and helped him shape his tactical philosophy. For Thiago Motta, it became very important that the players would be confident in finding the best passes or the best channels to run into. Positions don't matter in his philosophy, if the players are confident on the pitch and protect the ball. This may be one of the reasons why Hurzeler plays so expensive in his Bologna team. Set as a striker, he comes deep to get the ball when needed, aids the passing game, but is available for the final touch as well. Thiago Motta's famous 2-7-2 approach makes more sense after you understand his thinking process. He doesn't read the 2-7-2 formation vertically, but horizontally, and by doing so, every player on the pitch has a role in keeping possession of the ball, even the goalkeeper, who becomes a passing option. The passing game, especially in the defensive third, should be a preparatory phase for a vertical play. Beating the press through lateral and intricate passes serves as a tool to increase the speed of the attack when in the opposition's half. Of course, no team can win games only by keeping the ball. At some point, it's bound to be lost. Thiago Motta's out-of-possession approach was influenced, in his own words, by the 2014 Germany team. The German players, when they lost the ball, positioned themselves at a maximum distance of 5 to 10 meters from their opponent, ready to press immediately, thus instantly complicating the opposition's build-up phase. In other words, gegenpress. But for him, this gegenpress is done by the attacking players. The remaining defenders must be plan B in case the press is overrun. But they are positioned around the halfway line to support the pressure put on the opposition. Thus, surrounded by football's best tactical minds and with the desire of protecting the ball at all costs, Thiago Motta's philosophy was born. In the game, of course we'll go with the 4-2-3-1 to complement the gegenpress approach, or the 2-7-2. To support the idea of the goalkeeper becoming a passing option, we have a sweeper keeper on attack duty. He's meant to offer a passing option when needed and try to play on the ground, not through long balls, but also to sweep up loose balls. In front of him, the 4 defenders are assigned different roles. The right one is meant to come inside when his team is in possession, so an inverted fullback on defend. One of the central defenders, preferably the one next to the inverted fullback, is a libero on support. He is required to step into the midfield when in possession. The libero can even reach the halfway line or cross it depending on the game moment and the available space in front of him. Next to him, a ball-playing defender. This player is required to do the same as his teammate, but with a smaller range. On the left side, we have a fullback on support duty. He needs to provide a wide passing option as the build-up is progressing. In the midfield space, we have a defensive midfielder on support and a roaming playmaker. Instead of the roaming playmaker, a central midfielder could work. However, he is mainly focused on vertical movement. The roaming playmaker provides some lateral movement from time to time. The defensive midfielder is not required to primarily stop the opposition's counterattacks, he must be a passing option as well, driving a bit forward if needed. On the right and left side of the attack, we have 2 wingers on support duty. Their priority is to offer passing options in wide positions, but they are required to cut inside when the game allows them to. This can be done either through telling them to cut inside or have players that have the cuts inside from said flank as a player trait. A shadow striker and a complete forward on support duty complete the tactic. The shadow striker role was chosen as Hurzeler, through his movement, constantly releases the attacking midfielder into scoring opportunities. As a complete forward, this player is expected to come deep to get the ball or spearhead attacks depending on the game moment. That is why for this role, you must use an experienced player, capable of reading the game well. The roles are meant to recreate Bologna's forward movement and replicate their possession game. It doesn't always turn out as expected, but it's often confusing for the opposition. There are other player instructions listed here. His mentality, I would suggest positive. In possession, fairly wide, play out of defense, shorter passing directness and slightly higher tempo, mixed crosses and run a defense. The team should focus on keeping possession until an attacking opportunity comes up, but Bologna also intensifies the attacks as a group if they sense that the opposition is vulnerable, thus the run and defense instruction. In transition, counter-press, counter and distribute the ball quickly to the center defenders through short kicks. Out of possession, high line of engagement and a higher defensive line. Press much more often and prevent goalkeeper short distribution. The pressing game must be there, but if you feel that your team is vulnerable when losing the ball, lower the defensive line to a standard one and lower the pressing intensity. To be able to emulate Thiago Motta's approach, you need intelligent players. The movements they have developed for his Bologna team can happen with training. I liked using this tactic, but I felt like sometimes we struggled. For this reason, the players were not prepared for this approach, at least not all of them. However, we have won the league by a comfortable margin, scoring 89 goals in the process. We have also qualified to the Champions League phase and had our best European result yet, going to the second round. We put a good fight against Real Sociedad, but their quality was shown in the second leg, and domestically, we have won the treble, again. As said, I liked using this tactic, and when it emulated the real-life approach, it was a joy to watch. I strongly advise you to use it at least once in your save, and keep an eye on Thiago Motta. We might witness the growth of the next best football manager.